of the Revenue Focused Marketer, where we discuss anything and everything related to marketing as well as data. I'm your usual host, Hershey, and today we have Sara Storm, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Break the Box. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Awesome. So she's basically a sales powerhouse known for scaling SaaS revenue without any fluff. And she has spent over 20 plus years breaking down what actually works in the B2B SaaS sales. And from what I've heard, she doesn't really sugarcoat it. So if you're a SaaS founder, kind of tired of low win rates, bloated pipelines, this episode is really the one for you. We're also going to be diving into some really game-changing ideas today and kind of also talking about how AI is reshaping sales and revenue growth. Should founders really embrace it, fear it, or adapt fast? So let's kind of find out. And Sara, just to start off for our listeners here, I know your LinkedIn profile says you're the hammer so others don't have to be. What's the toughest reality that SaaS founders need to wake up to, in your opinion?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. Because I believe that we are going to a place where sales, revenue team, customer-facing roles will be cut down into half or more. So we are facing a reality where we will have to do a lot more ARR with a lot fewer people. So that's a reality check, right? Because before, if you look back in time, before COVID, we had a situation where VCs and PEs were throwing money at companies. Higher was that's how we grow. One person in equals X amount of revenue. And it's not going to look like that anymore. It doesn't look like that even now. So one of the challenges that I think is the biggest mind shift for SaaS founders right now is to accept that in a couple of years, your sales team of 20, 25 people or 30 people will be 4 people. And this is something we need to adapt our organizations to. This is something we need to adapt our middle management to. This is something we need to look at when we do recruitment. And we need to start building for that future today. Because if we start in 2 years, it's going to be too late. Because then you're going to have people who are not ready to drive the type of sales process that we need them to be ready for in our teams. So yeah.
No, that's brutal for sure, but I think that's something everybody has to kind of, keep an open eye to. Maybe let's start talking real examples. So could you share an example of a specific, SaaS company or like a project that you kind of worked on to help them scale? And maybe share what was some of the biggest challenges they faced.
Yeah, so we only work with SaaS companies, right? It's our only ICP, because both me and my co-founder and the consultants we work with on projects have vast experience from SaaS. So SaaS is a bit different from other company types. It operates a bit differently. And the projects that we are in are very often related to going from having a very spray and pray approach to the market, addressing a big TAM of different versions, to narrowing down, right? So a lot of projects we do has to do with running into, we have an ICP, we think, identifying we don't have a clear ICP, we don't have a clear point of view when it comes to who we should be selling to. And based on that, everything that follows, marketing, sales, is going offbeat, right? Yeah. So AI has done a lot there too to sort of help us fuck it up faster, because now we're doing spray and pray and outbound on markets that we should probably not even touch. We're spending sales time on markets that we shouldn't touch based on ACV, long sales cycles, etc. So a lot of situations we will go in and do ICP workshops first, because that's the foundation for all marketing and sales motion that will follow. And then we dive into buyer personas, who is the decision makers we're trying to target in these new ICPs. And after that, we go in and we put a framework together to start executing on these markets the way we should execute. So we often help companies go from very inbound led. So we're taking all the leads we get in. We have a pretty good inbound flow. We don't know how to do the outbound motion, to start doing the outbound motion upstream. So when I say upstream, I mean towards bigger accounts with higher ACV, because that's where we're moving. So a lot of companies right now in the EMEA market, at least, which is where I do most of my projects, have a challenge going from inbound to outbound, and from outbound SME or SMB to mid-market and enterprise. because that's the shift. So when it comes to the companies we work with companies like FSC, we work with companies like BrickPay, we work with companies, I have worked for Vainu before as an example, which is a Nordic player, and I have also worked a lot with HubSpot because I ran an agency before as a consultant, doing these type of implementations and moving of sales teams to get to a point where we are moving to an account-based sales strategy. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're only targeting enterprise. We can do mid-market motion with account-based approach. So when I say account-based approach, what I mean is that we have a lot of salespeople right now running on all types of companies. They're running on all kinds of brands. They're taking the inbound leads coming in. They're doing outreach to all companies that they can find on their list instead of having a target list. Like I have worked with wanted lists. I call them wanted because hit list sounds like we're in a war, and we're not in a war with the customer. Like we're trying to help them. But wanted list. So my most wanted accounts, and this is how I work in our own business too. I have 250 accounts in Europe that I will communicate with this year with the end goal to open up those accounts for our business. But it's only 250, and there are plenty of more SaaS companies in Europe, but we have criteria for who do we want to work with, what stage do they need to be in, what sub-segment of SaaS, what platforms do they need to work with for us to bring value. So that list is pretty thin. And that means that I, as an individual person doing sales too, because when you run your business, you're always doing sales, I can actually open these accounts and I have the time to do it because I'm doing tailored approaches. I'm doing showing up at their events, doing webinars that addresses them specifically to get them to understand who I am, my personal brand, and the business brand. And so many sales teams in Europe right now are doing AI outreach, and the AI outreach is terrible. Like it's just terrible. It's not, AI is not the problem. By the way, the AI engine is not the problem in itself. It is that we don't know how to do outbound with a messaging that actually resonates with our buyers, because we're not sure who our buyers are. And even bigger companies like Scale Up SaaS are still struggling with this. So they have a bunch of different industry verticals, right? And then they're doing, so this should be relevant for this industry. They're not addressing the buyer the way it needs to be addressed, because a marketing manager or a sales manager or an HR manager in the same company have different alignments and goals. They have different things they will trigger on. The narrative needs to be there. And we're sort of just, I don't know, walking around catching everything that blows by us. And it's not a good strategy as we progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you kind of mentioned about AI here, and AI is this thing that, is really changing everything, marketing, content, and now even sales.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, how are you seeing AI's impact on like sort of SaaS revenue strategies? We talked about some of the failures that kind of come with it because they don't
Yeah.
really know what they're targeting.
Yeah.
But what do you see major chunk of the players doing? And how
Yeah.
would you separate the founders that are kind of successful in implementing
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
people that are still struggling?
Yeah. So I have a good example of a founder who is succeeding. So Chili Piper is a US-based company, right? It's a big SaaS company. They're amazing. They're good on the market. They understand their ICPs. They have it nailed down. One of the things that they are doing, we had a webinar with Alina, who's one of the co-founders at Chili Piper, a couple of months ago. And one of the things that they are doing is AI agents to support the individual person in the company. So as we had that discussion, one of the things that came out is, look, the point with AI is not to scale outreach faster. It's not a specific motion we're looking to address. What we're looking to address is take a person like me or Alina or you, Hershey, and reinforce us with extra powers. It's like putting an Iron Man suit on, right? So this is what AI agents can support us with in our business. But this also needs to be impacted by who we're hiring. Because one of the skill sets that AI doesn't have yet, and will struggle to get to a point where it has, unless it will become completely autonomous, which is another discussion altogether, is to understand creativity, innovation, and people skills. So these things that has to do with how we interact with people will be much more important when we're trying to enforce a person with extra power using AI agents to automate a lot of the boring stuff that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? and then have them only focus on the things that has to do with creativity, innovation, curiosity, and how the market moves, and understanding bigger concepts that our brain is still a lot better than AI to do that.
Yeah.
So the point is to use AI agents, roll it out into the organization, and the companies who do that, and there are a few players in Europe who are doing that behind the scenes now, working on infusing their people with AI bots to do a lot of the things that are taking time from this individual in different roles, not just with sales, but also in HR, also in legal, also in the finance department, to be able to get that person to deliver 4 times as much output, only focusing on the things that has to do with strategic vision, curiosity, innovation, and how we can do social interactions together. Because we will come to a point where one AI bot at a B2B company will talk to another AI bot who's looking to buy that is in another company. We will come to that point where these small deals and small engagements will be done completely digitally, without higher management being involved, because higher management is busy with painting the picture of where this company is going, hiring really creative people to get us to move from an innovation space to become better and better and better. And that's what we should be spending our time with. That's what our brains are the best at doing, is the vision, mission, and sort of the acceleration on the market. We shouldn't be doing, let's buy this software. We shouldn't be in processes like that anymore, because it's a waste of our time. And that also means that there will be no salespeople, because the buyers will just hand this over to their agents to handle, based on whatever the market fit is for that specific software. So the SaaS industry that targets, like all the SaaS companies targeting SMB, doing 1 to 5 seats, they need to go upstream, because otherwise they will not be able to have salespeople hired. They will need to do it completely digitally, and their sales teams will just go into other roles, either in different companies or in their company, working with marketing for product, as an example, instead of doing sales. So this shift will be pretty immense. And what I can see, the US market is so much more mature than the European market is. We're moving a lot slower. And the reason for that is multifold. First of all, the US is more curious as a entrepreneurship country to new products that can remove inefficiencies than the European area is. And the other part also has to do with how much we value human interactions, right? Because we are either looking to make money or we're looking to have people be happy. And this is like always been a disconnect between these two goals, and they don't need to be a disconnect anymore, because now we can make a lot of money and we can also have people who are doing the things that they are really good at, which is the bigger concepts, on a day-to-day basis, instead of sitting with admin tasks that we shouldn't sit with those things, right?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think from what I conclude from what you said is like, AI isn't necessarily taking jobs, but it is asking you to kind of think at the bigger picture. And people who are kind of focused on just doing the repetitive task, maybe it's time for them to, kind of go a different timeline and kind of focus on things that really matter big picture and what AI can't necessarily do. I also wanted to now chime in, like with our product Dig Growth, a lot of we're investing our AI in is like kind of helping with predictive lead scoring. And helping, like, giving grades that are sort of done predictably to help align to our salespeople, like, what they really be focusing their time and energy on. So have you seen something like that in the industry, and what would be your thoughts on, like, using of AI for sort of something like predictive lead scoring?
When we were talking about agents before, some of the agents I'm talking about will be doing this. So I'm calling it an agent, but the agent can be in a platform, right? I'm calling it an agent because you're seeing it as an assistant agent to support whatever the workflow is. So when it comes to predictability of pipeline, predictability of lead scoring, predictability of how the market is moving, all of these things, we don't have the capacity to analyze these things on our own. It's a lot better to go to a system provider and say, look, I need to understand how this lead should be either put into nurture. I need to understand if it should be put into a sales process. Should we do this onboarding completely online? And these are things that a lot of European companies are also behind on in the SaaS space. So when you look at the products out there are amazing at this point. But with all systems, it is shit in, shit out. So if you don't put good data in there, it's the same with the CRM or a growth machine that's a sequence engine that does outreach, right? If you don't put good content inside there, good understanding of the market, because when you're doing lead scoring, you need to go back to, so which ICP is this company targeting, which buyers, what is a valuable lead, what does that mean for this business? And if they get that part wrong, your system will get it wrong because the input is wrong, right? And I'm sure you guys see this, that when it's unclarities behind the wheels, the car doesn't drive as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think here we always keep saying garbage in is garbage out. So
Yes.
I think it's the same analogy that kind of works
Yeah.
for us also.
Yeah.
And that's why I think our product, the heavy focus is in, kind of fixing the data that goes in before it
Yeah.
gives you the output.
Yeah.
Because that's the big chunk that a lot of key players are kind of still
Yeah.
missing, even in today's world.
And the thing is, as a vendor today, because I've been in the marketing and sales space, I've sold CRM, marketing automation, prospect tools, online tools to drive buyer's journey, buyer's experience. So I've been in that space for 12 years now, only that space. It's all I work with, right? The sales and marketing experience that we create for buyers. And that can be on a PLG motion, like a product-led motion, or it can be on a sales-led motion. It's independent of what type of motion you have. At the end of the day, we as vendors, unfortunately, can't just deliver platform anymore. We need to deliver competence to guide people into what to put into the platform to get the desired outcome. Otherwise, you end up in a situation, and I'm sure this has happened to you as it happens to all SaaS vendors in the world. We come to a point where the system is the problem, even though the system isn't actually the problem, right? The customer's perception is like, this doesn't work. Like, but guys, you don't even know what a valuable lead is for you. So of course the system doesn't work because you're putting in data points that are giving us a skewed view of what a good lead is. As an example, if we're looking at lead scoring and predictive leads analysis, right? And if you look at pipeline analysis or sales intelligence tools like Gong and all of these platforms that are out there to provide data points, if we don't have a framework for our sales people to be on, we can't measure outcome because the sales framework isn't in place. So all of these things it comes back to management competence in process. Like that's where we land up. And a lot of buyers, and I have been on the buyer side a lot, I've done a lot of demand specs, RFIs and stuff like that for these type of tools. And a lot of buyers are also not knowledgeable enough to be able to put together a good demand spec, leading to a lot of them will buy the wrong platform. And as a salesperson, when I'm selling platform, because I did that for years, I have a responsibility to make sure that the customers that I bring in has a low likelihood of churn. So I actually have a responsibility to explain and set expectations in the sales cycle where I'm telling the customers, look, this will fit you if you do this and this and this before you go into platform. If you don't do the pre-work, this will not be a good investment for you. And we will struggle for 6 months trying to get you to get usage up because you don't understand. So either you and I educate you together to make sure that we have a good project, or we should probably go our separate ways, right?
I think that's honestly some problems that we saw early on with the product also.
Yeah.
And that kind of led us to shift our approach from kind of being like, mainly as a product and now being
Yeah.
analytics as a service. So we
Yeah.
say that it takes sort of like a village to really get you the analytics that you need. And we
Yes.
don't want to just throw you to play with the product. Sure, that helps and it's intuitive today to use the product, but you
Yeah.
still need that human intervention to be able to tell you, to ensure the inputs that are going in are accurate.
Yeah.
And that's
And
why the sales... Yeah. No, go ahead.
Sorry, but I just very much agree with you. And this is the thing. It doesn't require any human interaction. It requires your expertise. Because
Definitely.
this is the thing, right? It doesn't, because they could have human time to spend on this. They could spend their own internal time. They probably don't know how to spend that time well. You guys do. So being a software company today requires so much more than product. It really does. Like from a narrative perspective, from an implementation perspective, and one of the things that I have a personal point of view when it comes to these things, since I've been in software sales for so long. For me, it's always made me sad, like sad as a person, like sad as a person, to see companies pushing their sales teams to sell to non-fit ICPs, and then the customer will churn, because we don't seem to consider what happens for the person who made the decision to buy that platform. What happens to their credibility in the organization? What happens to their career if they make mistakes when it comes to putting a system in place and they roll something out that's not going to give the company the benefits? Like, we're risking people's careers and jobs for bottom line. And bottom line, I'm all for. I'm all for bottom line. I've been a very like KPI and numbers driven person my entire career. But at the end of the day, we also as vendors needs to step up and take our responsibility. And sometimes just say to a customer, I don't think you should do this with us. This is not the right time. Like, it's okay. It's better that you go and you get your foundation in place, and then we can talk, because we can build trust on the market, being a vendor like that. And I don't really see any SaaS AI tool taking that space. Being a vendor who actually behaves responsibly about the product that they're selling, right? And I don't know how you guys see it, but for me, it's always been, I don't know, I feel like it's our responsibility as salespeople. And when I say salespeople, I mean the salespeople's managers, because that's the whole driving point, right? And I'm still waiting for that shift to happen, where we start looking at churn risk in the sales process.
Definitely. And I think with the number of tools that are coming out and the
Yeah.
investment that's going in there, this is a very relevant point, because
Yeah.
our tech stacks have become so huge, we don't
Yes.
even know how to manage them anymore. So we
No.
can't simply just rely on buying another software to manage our other softwares,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We
Uh,
need to do foundational work. And foundational work, once you plug in a tool like you guys, that foundational work will pay off, and they will have a successful platform and project. They will think it's the platform that's so good, but at the end of the day, it's the foundation that they put into the platform that made the project successful. Because to be fair, if you look at the sales tech stack environment, how many tools are out there, and I have sold CRM for many years as well. One of the things that I always told my customers was like, so our CRM has bells and whistles. The other CRMs on the market also has bells and whistles. What we can do for you is to make sure that whatever you're going to use the CRM for, that you will use it in a way that will actually give you the output you want. And this is the difference. It's not the system, because systems go like this. You guys might be top of the market for 2 months, and then a competitor will launch a product add-on that makes them better for a couple of months, and then you go like this with each other, right? But the thing that remains is the sort of the viewpoint of, what are we here to do as a vendor? What is my impact on the customers that I bring into the table? And what am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to achieve output, or am I trying to roll out the system? And these are two different perspectives, right?
No, that's really like wisely spoken, and I think that's something that needs to be a big consideration for
Yeah.
bosses now to kind of get to that level. I
Yeah.
know we're at sort of the end of our time here today, so I do want to say thank you so much again for tuning in with us today and sharing your insights. I think this is exactly what SaaS founders need to hear
Yeah.
about the changes that are happening in the industry and how to kind of go with ethical ways moving forward, so
Yeah.
they can kind of make decisions that kind of avoid these super high churn rates, right?
Can I
So,
add one thing before we wrap up to founders who are listening? So the thing is that the strategy I'm talking about, the ethical approach, it will also make you more money, because it costs a lot more to drive in new business versus keeping and growing existing base. So your base can be your biggest income source if you choose to go a path that is a bit more long term, which means that bottom line, this will make you more money, because you can't only go on the ethical line. You need to understand that bottom line, this is what we're giving to our shareholders, this is what we're giving to our employees, this is the growth we need to do. But this approach, 6 months in, will make you more money. I just want to clarify that I'm not all about the fluff. this end goal is to make more money with less people, because that's where we're going.
1000%. And I guess, like, before we wrap up, for people that want to kind of find you and learn more about your work, where can they kind of connect with you?
LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn. I will accept everyone who sends a connection request to me. If you don't start a dialogue with me though, I will remove you after a couple of weeks. But just send a LinkedIn connect, ask me questions, talk to me, and then let's do it.
Perfect. Thank you so
Yeah.
much again for your time today. And to our listeners, if you're ready to stop guessing and really start scaling, definitely follow her and then kind of check out Break the Box for more sort of non-BS revenue strategies. And if you found this episode valuable, definitely share your thoughts with us. And do let us know what are some other topics that you really want us to dive deep into. So see you next time, and thank you so much.